6:45. This is the Sri Lanka Broadcasting Corporation. Here's the news edited by J. Yogaraj and read by Ramesh Peris. The headlines. The second tranche of IMF is expected in September. 20 billion rupees will be allocated on this year's budget for welfare activities. 6,000 state employees will be recruited as teachers in near future. Damadeniya Rajamaha Viharya will be made a sacred place. World Environment Day falls today. US Ambassador urges expansion of female involvement in Sri Lanka's judiciary. Jaffna University suspends 31 students over clash. The NBRO today issued an early landslide warning for several districts owing to the inclement weather conditions. In news overseas, Tiananmen Square, Hong Kong police detain activists on anniversary of massacre. In sports, it's soccer. Zlatan Ibrahimovic retires. Swedish great ends football career at 41. Now the local news in detail. The second tranche of IMF is expected in September. The Treasury further said the sum of 35 billion rupees will be allocated for social welfare activities in budget proposals. The deficit of 20 billion rupees will be allocated for this purpose. Meanwhile, two loan facilities worth $700 million also expected from the World Bank this year. The Social Welfare Fund will be issued to provide relief assistance to around 3 million low-income families in the country. Meanwhile, the Education Ministry has taken effective measures to recruit more teachers to teach advanced-level classes in the state schools. Accordingly, around 26,000 teachers will be recruited to teach various subjects. Minister Susil Premjayantha says, as part of this project, 6,000 teachers will be recruited for the sole purpose of serving advanced-level classes of 1,500 schools in remote areas. The Treasury has given permission to recruit these teachers. The National Building Research Organization today issued an early landslide warning for several districts owing to the inclement weather conditions. Accordingly, a warning was issued for the Bulat Sinhala, Agalawatha, Palindanura and Wallavita Divisional Secretariat divisions and its surrounding areas in the Kalutara district. Neluwa, Alpitiya and Nagoda areas in the Galle districts, Passara area in the Badula district are also under landslide threat if rain continues. Meanwhile, the National Disaster Management Centre says that 165 persons of 45 families in the Ratnapura and Kalutara districts have been affected by the adverse weather during the past few days. US Ambassador to Sri Lanka, Julie Chang, has highlighted the importance of equality and expanding women's contributions to the country's legal profession. Speaking at the National Law Conference held yesterday, Ambassador Chang highlighted that the judicial sector is vital for upholding the rule of law and protecting the freedoms that sustain democracy, and thus spoke on the imperative need for the importance of equality within the profession. The ambassador was joined by a Utah State Supreme Court Justice and a U.S. attorney from Utah, both females, who also discussed the importance of empowering women leaders in the judicial field. This news broadcast comes to you from the Sri Lanka Broadcasting Corporation. We continue with more local news. A total of 31 students of the Jaffna University have been suspended owing to unruly behavior. Accordingly, the group has been identified as students of the Faculty of Management and Business Studies and was suspended after a fight reportedly broke out between second and third year students on Friday. Thus, 16 second-year students and 15 from the third year were banned from entering the university premises, including the hostel, after preliminary investigations found them to be involved. Tens of thousands of pilgrims have visited Anuradhapura and surrounding sacred areas today as well. Atamasthanya, Tantirimala and Mihintala sacred areas are full of devotees at present. Many devotees observed sale today as well. The Dharma Rashmi Pujan zone in Pitipana, Homagama opens for the public for the third day today. This will conclude today. The public can venerate the Nilgiri sacred relics and displayed at the Sugata Bimbarame temple in Homagama. The sacred relics were found in the Nilgiri Mahasaya, which is considered to be the second largest Dagaba in the Ampara district. Meanwhile, Sambuddhaloka Pujan zone, which has been organized by the Amaraviru Payamaga Foundation, will be held in Hambantota today as well. And that concludes local news.
The main news story is brought to you by Siddhalepa Vedamahatmya.
Moving on to the main news story, the Damadini Rajamahawihare will be made a sacred place soon. The Rajamahawihare is considered as one of the most precious and archaeologically important sites in the country. Governor of the North-Western Province, Lakshman Yapabewardena, has given instructions to the relevant authorities in this regard. And that was the main news story.
The main news story was brought to you by Siddhalepa Vedamahatmya.
In Watchlight this morning, there has been a significant increase in the dengue cases reported within the last couple of months. Dr. Ananda Vijay Vikrama says that there is a risk of a dengue epidemic with the coming monsoon. He also mentioned that 60 to 70 patients come to the IDH hospital for treatment every day, and that the number is growing rapidly. Meanwhile, Prime Minister Dinesh Gunawardena informed the governors to intervene with all the authorities and take necessary measures to prevent the spread of dengue. In a discussion held yesterday, the Prime Minister gave these instructions and said that it is necessary to continue the ongoing disease control programs through the Regional Health Medical Officer's Office. And that was Watchlight. Moving on to a bulletin of world news. First, the headlines. Leipzig violence clashes in German city over jail term for woman who attacked neo-Nazis. Tiananmen Square, Hong Kong police detains activists on anniversary of massacre. Ukraine war, anti-Kremlin fighters say Russian soldiers captured. Now the world news in detail. Left-wing protesters and police have clashed for a second night over a jail term given to a woman convicted of vigilante attacks on neo-Nazis. Demonstrators in the eastern city of Leipzig set up roadblocks, lit fires and threw stones at officers, police said. Lena E. was sentenced to 5 years in jail but released pending an appeal as she had been detained since 2020. The protest in the city where Lena E. had studied had earlier been banned. Police in Hong Kong have detained several pro-democracy activists on the anniversary of the Tiananmen Square massacre. Authorities have banned a public commemoration of the 1989 incident which saw China crush peaceful protests in Beijing with tanks and troops. However, candlelight vigils have been taking place in other cities worldwide. Among those detained was 67-year-old Alexander Wong, a prominent campaigner nicknamed Grandma Wong. Fighters opposed to the government in Moscow say that they have captured some Russian soldiers in Belgorod, near the border with Ukraine. Belgorod's top official replied to say that he had agreed to meet the men's captors if the soldiers were still alive. But later the fighters said that their governor had not found the courage to meet them and they would hand over their captives to Ukraine. Russia has blamed Ukraine for recent attacks in its border territories. Back to the headlines of the world news. Leipzig violence clashes in German city over jail term for woman who attacked neo-Nazis. In Tiananmen Square, Hong Kong police detain activists on anniversary of massacre. In Ukraine war, anti-Kremlin fighters say Russian soldiers captured. And that concludes world news.
Development news.
Moving on to development news. John Keel's Holdings expects the tourist arrival numbers to hit normal by December of this year. Booking data and growing momentum in interest suggests that the company and the broader industry would hint levels that were previously seen before COVID-19. JK chairperson Krishan Balendra said we would have about 60 to 65% of the arrivals in May 2018, which is pre-COVID-19. Look at our forward bookings and the momentum we expect by the peak season in December. Tourist arrivals would be almost back to pre-COVID-19 levels. And that was development news. Moving on to sports news. Sri Lanka's Tushari Karunaratne and Jayeshi Uttara have won 2 medals at the Asian Junior Athletic Championships 2023, currently being held in South Korea. Accordingly, Karunaratne bagged the silver medal, while Uttara won the bronze medal in the women's 400-meter competition. Meanwhile, in soccer, AC Milan's Zlatan Ibrahimovic has retired from football at the age of 41, bringing to an end one of the modern era's most glittering careers. Quote, "I say goodbye to football, but not to you," unquote. The Swede told the San Siro crowd after Sunday's last game of the season. Ibrahimovic had already announced he would leave the Italian club. He scored 511 goals for clubs including Paris Saint-Germain, Manchester United and both AC and Inter Milan, winning leagues titles in 4 countries. And that was sports news.
Go ekak tiyana youth eකට life එකේ change එකට නියමෙට set වෙන්න ඇස් වහගෙන දැකපු හීන හැබැයි කරන්න youth එකට නියමෙට set වෙන friendship එක මෙන්න.
The all-new NSB Ithru Mithru account, NSB IM, a plan for your dream.
Business News, sponsored by National Savings Bank, the safest place for your money.
In business news, Santa's General Insurance Company marked a milestone in its history by achieving record growth of 53% in the first quarter of 2023, thereby becoming the local insurance company with the highest growth rate. Compared to the first quarter of 2022, the company managed to record a 61% growth in the non-motor insurance sector and a 51% growth in the motor insurance sector in the first quarter of 2023. In addition, the SGIC has been able to claim a 1% market share in the general insurance sector in Sri Lanka. The insurance schemes with high benefits introduced by SGIC and the friendliness, helpfulness and efficient service provided by our company to customers during insurance claims related processes was a strong reason behind our growth, said SGIC Chairman Tishan Subhasingha. And that was business news.
Business News, sponsored by National Savings Bank, the safest place for your money.
Go ekak tiyana youth එකට life එකේ change එකට නියමෙට set වෙන්න ඇස් වහගෙන දැකපු හීන හැබැයි කරන්න youth එකට නියමෙට set වෙන friendship එක මෙන්න.
The all-new NSB Ithru Mithru account, NSB IM, a plan for your dream.
Moving on to economic news, PSC International Private Company, which carries out the operations and development of the Singapore port, has expressed interest in the investing opportunities for development and operations in the ports of Sri Lanka. This was disclosed to the Minister of Ports, Navigation and Aviation, Nimal Siripala De Silva, when he was on an observation tour on June 3rd to investigate the operations and development of Singapore's main port. During the tour, the minister had a special discussion with the head of PSA International Private Company, which carries out the operations and development of the Singapore port. PSA is one of the largest companies operating in ports in the world, and 37,000 million containers are handled per year in Singapore's main port alone. And that was economic news.
Weather report.
Moving on to weather news. The Mid-Department says southwest monsoon is likely to be gradually established across the island during next few days. Showers or thunder showers will occur at times in the western, Sabaragamuwa and central provinces and in the Galle and Matara districts. Fairly heavy showers, about 75 millimeters, are likely at some places in the Sabaragamuwa province and in the Galle, Matara and Kalutara districts. Several spells of showers will occur in the northwestern province. Showers or thunder showers will occur at few places in the Uva province and in Ampara and Batticaloa districts during the evening or at night. Strong winds about 40 to 45 kilometers per hour can be expected at times over the island. This weather report was published this morning at 4:30 a.m. Further details could be obtained by visiting the official website of the department. And that was the weather report. Back to the headlines. The second tranche of IMF is expected in September. 20 billion rupees will be allocated on this year's budget for social welfare activities. 6,000 state employees will be recruited as teachers in near future. Dambadini Raja Mahaviharya will be made a sacred place. World Environment Day falls today. The US Ambassador urges expansion of female involvement in Sri Lanka's judiciary. Jaffna University suspends 31 students over clash. The National Building Research Organization today issued an early landslide warning for several districts owing to the inclement weather conditions. In news overseas, Tiananmen Square, Hong Kong police detained activists on anniversary of massacre. Moving on to sports, it's soccer. Zlatan Ibrahimovic retires. Swedish great ends football career at the age of 41. And with that, we conclude this news broadcast from the Sri Lanka Broadcasting Corporation.